So what happens when a relationship ends, but the law isn't even sure it ever really began? Today, we're diving into a landmark Indian Supreme Court case that had to tackle what a family actually looks like in the 21st century. And well, it's a case that really makes you think about the lines we draw in our own lives.
It all boils down to this one question. What's the real legal difference between a marriage and a live-in relationship? And you might be wondering, why should you care? Well, because the answer decides everything. Rights to property, inheritance, financial support. These are huge issues that are popping up more and more as relationships just don't fit into the same old traditional boxes.
Now, this wasn't some abstract legal debate. Oh no, this whole thing exploded from some very real, very messy human drama. At the center of it all was a teacher, D. Velusamy. On one side, you have D. Patchaiammal, who says he married her and then just left. And on the other side, a woman named Lakshmi, who Velusamy swore was his one and only legal wife. A classic love triangle, but with some incredibly high legal stakes.
To really get why this landed in the Supreme Court, we've got to rewind and look at the beginning. A classic he said, she said that kicked off a legal battle that would last for nearly a decade.
Okay, so on one side you have Velusamy. He shows up with what looks like a slam dunk case. Wedding photos, a ration card, his son's school records, all showing he'd been married to Lakshmi since 1980. But on the flip side, Patchaiammal has her own story. She says, nope, we got married in 1986, we lived like husband and wife, and then he just abandoned me, leaving her with nothing. She wasn't asking for a mansion, she was just suing for basic maintenance so she could survive.
So, the case starts its long journey up the legal ladder. In 2004, the family court actually sides with Patchaiammal. Then, 5 years later, the Madras High Court agrees with them. Get this. Both of the lower courts decided that Velusamy was not married to Lakshmi and therefore was married to Patchaiammal. So, with two big losses under his belt, Velusamy takes his fight to the highest court in the land, the Supreme Court of India. And this, right here, is where things get really fascinating. Because the Supreme Court wasn't just going to rehash the same old facts. They spotted a huge, fundamental problem with how the case had been handled from day one. The Supreme Court found something pretty staggering. Think about this for a second. The entire case depended on whether Velusamy was married to this woman, Lakshmi. And yet, Lakshmi herself was never involved. She was never notified, never called to the stand. The woman whose entire legal and social identity was being debated had no idea what was even happening. Two different courts had basically declared her marriage void without her even being in the room. Now, this wasn't just a simple mistake. It goes against a core principle of justice, the right to be heard. You might hear lawyers call it adi alteram partem, which is just a fancy way of saying, let the other side be heard too. And the court put it so powerfully, you just can't strip away someone's rights without at least giving them a chance to tell their side of the story. That's the bedrock of a fair system, right? So, on top of this whole missing witness mess, the court had a legal puzzle. There were two different laws they had to look at. The old rule, Section 125, was pretty cut and dry. Only a legally married wife could get maintenance. Simple. But then there was this new law, the Domestic Violence Act of 2005, which was built for the modern world. It protected women in any domestic relationship, and it introduced this new, kind of vague but super important idea, a relationship in the nature of marriage. No one was totally sure what that meant, and it fell right into the Supreme Court's lap to define it.
And this is what forced the Supreme Court to do something totally groundbreaking. They had to legally define what a marriage-like relationship actually is in modern India. They had to draw the line.
The court made such a powerful point here. They basically said, society doesn't stand still, so why should the law? They recognized that live-in relationships were a fact of life and that Parliament, with this new DV Act, was trying to play catch-up. The court saw its job as figuring out what the law means for the world we actually live in today, not the world of 50 years ago.
And to build their definition, the court didn't just look inward. They looked all around the world. They studied the American idea of palimony, financial support when an unmarried couple breaks up. They even dug into the famous Hollywood case of Marvin v. Marvin. This just shows they weren't making a snap decision. They were carefully building a legal framework for a new social reality.
So after all this research, all this analysis, it all led to the absolute heart of this judgment. They created a clear, actionable test that courts would use for years and years to come.
So first, the court had to define the key phrase. What is a relationship in the nature of marriage? Well, they said it's not just any live-in situation. It's way more serious than that. It's something that feels like and looks like a marriage, a lot like a common law marriage, even if you never had the ceremony or signed the paperwork. And here it is, the big one, what became known as the Velusamy test. Let's break it down. Number 1, public image. You have to present yourselves to the world as if you're spouses. Number 2, legal age. Pretty straightforward, you both have to be old enough to legally get married. Number 3, and this one is a huge deal, you both have to be eligible to marry. That means neither of you can already be married to someone else. And finally, number 4, cohabitation. You have to have actually lived together for a good chunk of time. 4 clear conditions.
And just to be crystal clear, the court also spelled out what doesn't count. A keeper or mistress, a one-night stand, a casual thing where you just spend weekends together. Nope, none of that qualifies. And they really drew a hard line on that third point. If one of you is already married to somebody else, the relationship just cannot be legally in the nature of marriage. End of story.
So, with this brand new legal test in hand, what did the Supreme Court actually decide for Velusamy and Patchaiammal? Well, its final order was frankly a masterclass in how to do justice the right way.
The court didn't pick a winner. It couldn't. Because of that huge procedural mistake, not bringing Lakshmi in to testify, the entire foundation of the lower court rulings was just broken. So they did the only fair thing they could do. They remanded the case. It's like hitting a giant reset button and sending it all the way back to the beginning.
The Supreme Court's to-do list for the family court was incredibly clear. First, forget the old rulings, just set them aside. Second, you must find Lakshmi, and you must hear her side of the story. Third, after you figure out the facts about that first marriage, you have to apply our new 4-part test to the relationship between Velusamy and Patchaiammal. Basically, do it all over again, but this time, do it right.
So why are we still talking about a case from 2010? Why does it matter so much today? Because its impact went way beyond just those 3 people. It created a legal earthquake.
The Velusamy judgment became the bedrock, the foundation for every single case on this topic that came after it. It wasn't the final word, but it was the first and most important word. Later cases, like Chanmuniya and Indra Sarma, they all built on, refined, and even expanded what Velusamy started, creating this really rich, evolving area of family law.
And yet, for all its forward-thinking interpretation, the court also showed some amazing restraint. It made it very clear that its job was to interpret the law, not to rewrite it. Parliament used that very specific phrase, relationship in the nature of marriage, not live-in relationship. The court respected that choice. They were essentially saying, if the law needs to be broader, that's a job for the lawmakers, not for the judges.
And all of this leaves us with a huge, thought-provoking question that this case just captures perfectly. In a world that's changing so fast, what's the law's proper role? Should it lead the charge, pushing society forward? Or should it be more of a follower, carefully adapting only after society's already made a shift? The Velusamy case shows a court trying to walk that tightrope, and the debate it sparked is one we're definitely still having today.